Hi, and welcome to Maintain Me's resource channel on YouTube. I'm Morgan Jenkins, and I'm the director at Maintain Me.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I'm RN owner with Maintain Me.
Today's program is going to be how to interview a home care company and what questions to ask when you're comparing home care companies side by side to make the best choice for you and your family. Chelsea, what questions do you typically ask? I know this falls under case management, and so you have a lot of experience with this and helping your clients. And I'm sure there are some real important questions that everybody should be considering.
Yeah, thanks, Morgan. I think one of the most important things that I teach my families and my aging population is how does home care work? What is home care? Kind of the basic of, okay, because I think it's confusing, right? So there's home health care and there's home care and there's just all this other terms that kind of get kind of pushed together. And I think there's not a very clear definition as to what home care truly is. So I think I'll start there. Home health care is a covered benefit after a change of condition. And so that is something that is covered under insurance. It is ordered by a doctor. It includes specialties such as nurse, social worker, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and a certified nurse assistant. That is not what we're talking about today. I think today what we're going to be talking about is kind of one of the most common things that people understand as home care. And I think it's important to understand what it is. Does my insurance pay for it? That's a big question people ask. And then also understanding, kind of the breakdown of that. So one of the things that I tell my families and my aging or my clients is that home care is never covered typically by insurance unless they have a long-term care insurance benefit that would qualify them. And again, once you have long-term care insurance, there's a whole different set of qualifications in order to even get that covered, which we could talk about at a later time. We'll cover long-term care insurance as well. But that's not for today. So we'll talk a little bit about this private pay home care service that a lot of people are familiar with. It's been around forever. In fact, I started as a home care provider, not that I worked for one of them, and I was going around all over and taking care of the 65 plus population. So I know a lot about it. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a great option for people to stay at home. So understanding that home care is never covered under insurance unless it's long-term care, which we could talk about at a later time. The other thing to note is that, who's providing the care. Okay. So there's a couple different ways you could do home care, right? You can go and ask your neighbor's daughter to come do some home care and supplement care. And then there's home care companies, right? And the benefit is what I tell my families is, hey, if you don't have that neighbor's daughter or family or whatever that's going to provide this home care, there are companies that do that. And I always tell them that the benefit of doing it through a company is the insurance coverage. So, when you find somebody close by that's going to, supplement this care, that insurance is not typically there. So this is liability insurance, this is injury insurance, depends on the company on how much insurance they have. Say, for instance, something gets broken in their house. A lot of those things could be covered. So
I was going to ask to elaborate, just not to be confused with the health insurance we were just speaking about. You're referring to a liability insurance that the provider carries for their employees when you use a company versus your neighbor. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And thanks for spelling that out. I think it's important to break that down a little bit. So yeah, absolutely. And it depends on the company and how big they are and what type of insurance they would cover. Do they have, liability obviously is the big one, but, maybe even personal items and things that, just that might fall into that a little bit more detailed. Again, that they would probably have to speak a little more to that by each company. But that is a benefit from going with a company. The other thing too is going with the company, because they carry a caseload, they're often a little better about identifying change. And then also having a almost like a sphere of support to maybe even get help. And so I think that's a big benefit. But some of the things that I always teach my clients is how it works, what to look for, things like that. So let's start with minimum hours per day. Most home care companies have a minimum hour per day. And what that means is they require you to have X amount of hours this day for us to even come out and staff that shift. So for instance, here in Denver, our average minimum hour per day is 4 hours. So, when we're looking at it with a family, I think it's really important for them to ask that when they're trying to seek help and figure out how many hours either per day or per week they're really looking for, and what options they really have, because each company is different, right? The larger the company, the minimum hour per day starts to get more flexible. So the smaller the company, you'll start to see, they don't budge on that 4 hour per day. It might not be worth it for them to send a caregiver out for a 1 hour shift, or maybe they don't have enough caregivers. So that's another thing I talk to them about, is asking about staffing. Don't be afraid to ask about staffing, right? These are the people that are, number one, going to be in your house. Some transparency. All of healthcare has a lot of turnover. So I think it's important to understand how many caregivers they have, and is it possible to have the same caregivers? The answer might be no, but at least and it's something that they can weigh. The other thing is qualifications. So not every home care company will honor a CNA certification, a certified nurse assistant certification. So, you can have the same cost per hour for somebody who, anybody without any credentials, but just has a caring heart. That is usually considered a personal care provider, PCP, or somebody that's actually taken a training in kind of daily living activities such as bathing, dressing, transfers, things, and also how to identify to get help. And so that's kind of where that CNA certification, certified nurse assistant, comes into play. And not all home cares recognize this. So, but there are some that do, right? And that will affect the cost. And so, if they do recognize the certification, you might see a range in cost for the certification alone. Then you add the hours, you see a range of cost as well. So let's go back to that cost for just a second, because one of the other things you'll see, which I think is really important, is let me give you an example. Say one of my seniors goes in and they're like, I need to have home care in my home. And I don't really know what that looks like, but I want them to come out. So we can look at, okay, well, this is how much you truly need. And that's something Maintain Me provides, but this is something that you would truly need. And at what point are you going to get a break or maybe a flat rate fee, right? So we all know that home care is typically billed per hour on a cost. However, some of the larger companies, or depending on the type of hours that you want per day, you could almost get into a flat fee cost per day. So if it's 12 hours or is it 24 hours, at what point is there a flat fee and it's no longer hourly? And how much is that going to save me over a week's time or maybe a month's time or something like that? So again, that's kind of really digging into that cost analysis, which is what Maintain Me does in our consulting program when we're actually doing the options and handoff in the second program. But it's something to consider. They need to understand that at some point in the process, there is a flat fee cost in some cases. And it's important to ask, is there ever X amount of hours that I can meet per day or per week that might get me to that flat fee cost? I mean, maybe it's just an hour away from what they're already doing, right? So just being cognizant that there is different payment models. Other than that, I think, getting a feel, the person that usually does the assessment on site will kind of help you with a care plan that they think they can meet. Maintain Me will do a personalized care plan if they wanted actually help setting it up. But if you're doing this on your own or you're doing this for a loved one, it's important to understand cost, qualifications, minimum hours per day. Do I have long-term care insurance? We'll do that one really soon here about long-term care insurance and qualifications for that. But just recognizing that is one of the only ways to have it paid for. Just know that we don't ever want somebody to go into home care and think everything's private pay, and then they have a long-term care insurance. So if you have a long-term care insurance, talk to somebody about that. We'll go into how we consult for long-term care insurance in another episode. But what about you, Morgan? Anything else that I missed? I mean, obviously, when I'm looking at it, I want to get the best care for the best cost. And I think as a family member, that's probably where they're at too, right? I want the best care for the best cost. I want to fill in the gap for my whoever, right, loved one, so that they can stay at home longer independent. Is there anything else that you look at with your families when you're looking at home care?
Yeah, I think it's important to address how they communicate. So if you have a home care company that's starting and you're the one son, daughter, and you live out of state, how is that home care company going to communicate with you if you're helping your loved one set this up? Are they going to call you? Is there one person that they need to talk to? How do they know how it's going every day in the home? Particularly if their parent maybe has a cognitive impairment and can't be a good historian for who was there and what they did. And so how will they communicate with you is a good question to ask. I think you touched on a lot of really important ones. The certification is huge. Background check, I think you mentioned.
What
kind of background check they do?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring up is, what is their onboarding process, right? What do they require to bring somebody on? Do they do a background check? Do they do a drug test? Do they, I don't know the rules for home care as far as what is required for them. I know that as you start getting deeper into the care community, that those things are required. But we have to understand that home care is, one of the most, I don't even know what word, but most popular. It's been around the longest.
They have to do a background check.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. So I think that it's one of the things that it's the first place to start. If the finances are there to being able to supplement help. I will tell you right now, I have a deep love for home care. These people are, at one point I was living with this couple. I'd go to school Monday through Thursday, and I would take care of them Friday through Sunday, and I would live in their basement and take care of them. And so they became a kind of an extension of, like a family member with me. And so I them, right. And so it's a very special thing. It can be as close or not as close as you want. Right. So, but it's just, when somebody's in there with you daily, it takes on a very special role in somebody's life. And so I don't want to take it lightly. I think that they are kind of the saving grace and helping seniors stay independent at home. And we have a lot of people that we prefer based off of quality outcomes and how they handle, certain situations with seniors that we recommend. And so we want to be able to bring our expertise to the table if it makes sense, or just build a care plan for somebody to help them understand, prioritizing maybe even their needs based on their budget, right? So, what do I really need and what can I afford might be very different. And so having a real conversation about that. I think the only thing I really missed here is that when we are helping people with home care services, with my nurse background, I will tell you I'm a stickler about talking about the what if of an emergency. And so some people may not go to this length of talking about emergency situations with their home care company. And I think it's really important to understand, if you come over for your shift and Mr. Smith is no longer, he's not moving or he's not acting the same. What, do we know Mr. Smith's wishes? Are they put up so that anybody could understand it, even if it was a brand new caregiver to this person? So just those things about, can we work closely enough with this company to make sure that we are encompassing and looking at all aspects? Because the whole point is to put this home care company in place to keep this person safe. And so that's something that we evaluate as a company is, what is your standard practice for emergency things? And, do you know your client's wishes or, your role in that? So that's just kind of a little deeper, but that's all I have really for home care. We love home care. We have a lot of partners out there that we work very closely with. And I can't say enough about them. And we hope this is helpful when helping kind of figuring out how to narrow down what information is relevant and how to compare even one home care company to the next. So anything else you want to finish up with, Morgan, before we head out?
No, I think you did a great job.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. We'll be back. We'll talk. We'll add long-term care insurance to one of these resources and how that works. Again, we also a consulting thing for that, but we will give you the basics, the down and dirty, so that you know when you're navigating your long-term care insurance, how to, what questions to ask and kind of the qualifications across the board. Again, there might be specific things to yours, but we'll teach you all that next time. All right. Signing off.
All right.